Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. Hey, guess what? We got some new Q. I'll bet you already knew that, though. You know how I know that you knew that? Because you're watching my video. I'm going to read through these once, and then I'm going to give you my analysis. You know why? Because that's what I do. 1671, 38 minutes after the hour of 10, we get this tweet from Lee Stranahan. Breaking, I'm at the federal courthouse, and it seems that Imran Awan's plea deal says that he cannot be charged with any previous nonviolent crime. CST. Q says, think logically. Think IG report. Think what's missing. Do you think this was going to be litigated in this setting? Case that implicates some of the most senior elected officials. Treason is being handled by the appropriate office. Think national security. Q. Post 1672, 59 minutes after the hour of 10, we get this Donald Trump tweet. Our Justice Department must not let Awan and Debbie Wasserman Schultz off the hook. The Democrat IT scandal is a key to much of the corruption we see today. They want to make a plea deal to hide what is on their server. Where is server? Really bad. And that's from 10:07 a.m. on June 7th. Q says, logical thinking. Why was the case against Awan filed under bank fraud? The result today is regarding bank fraud. See last. Connect. The swamp is being drained. Q. Post 1673, 49 minutes after the hour of 1 p.m. Responding to an Anon who posts Anon's law fag here regarding Awan. Anon's already figured this out by I can add that I have suspected for some time that the state charges were just a delay tactic until the main indictments are unsealed. It is also possible or even likely given the way they treated Awan that he will be a prosecution witness since they would have never let him wander otherwise. Lots more winning in store. I'm enjoying the movie. Q says matters of national security. Leaves us a link and says Q. Post 1674, 59 minutes past the hour of 1 p.m. Q says, add another to the list. Leaves us this NPR link. Says conspiracy, coincidence, Q. 1675, 39 minutes after the hour of 5 p.m. Responding to an Anon who posts this graphic here of President Trump getting on Marine Force One. I'm off to save the world. Aren't you coming? And then we get this picture here. 1676, 20 minutes after the hour of 6 p.m. For years, schools worked alongside another Justice Department mainstay, David Margulies, who is known as the Yoda of the department. When Margulies died, DOJ brass asked schools to come back to Washington to try to fill those shoes. Divide, they try. Fail, they will. Everything has meaning. Q. All right, before we begin, I want to wish you all a happy and healthy 4th of July. I hope you're all able to celebrate wherever you are with family or friends, or if you're out at the barbecue, or if you're at work, or if you're just sitting at home having some coffee with me. Happy 4th of July. That includes our friends from over the pond. Everybody's welcome to celebrate personal civil liberties, and that's what we are doing today. And of course, with any good holiday, there's got to be cake. And I've got cake. That's right. There you go. There's a patriotic cake for you right there. Look at that. How do they do that? I know how to bake a cake, but do they just make 3 cakes and then they chop it all up and then put it back together like Legos and slap some whipped cream on it? How do they do that? I don't know. Look at this one. This one's cool too. Take a bite of that. I love blue. Celebration, home of the brave. Honor, land of the free. One nation under God, made in USA, American. That's an American cake right there. And you even got Uncle Sam back there and he's pointing at you and he's like, I want you to have some cake. So have some cake, sit down, let's do some Q, let's go. Post 1671, an Anon post this from Lee Stranahan on Twitter. Breaking, I'm at the federal courthouse and it seems that Imran Awan's plea deal says that he cannot be charged with any previous non-violent crime. And he says CST, I'm not exactly sure what CST is. Q says think logically. Thing, IG report. Think what's missing. Do you think this was going to be litigated in this setting? Case that implicates some of the most senior elected officials. Treason is being handled by the appropriate office. Think national security. Q. And of course, what we're talking about is the Imran Awan plea deal. This is off of Zero Hedge. I'm going to try and blow it up for you as best I can. Oh, that's big. Imran Awan gets sweetheart plea deal. DOJ won't prosecute alleged spy ring cyber crimes. The Department of Justice won't prosecute Imran Awan, a former IT administrator for Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and dozens of other Democrats for allegations of cybersecurity breaches, theft, and potential espionage as part of a plea agreement on one count of unrelated bank fraud. After the entry of your client's plea of guilty to the offense identified in paragraph 1 above, your client will not be charged with any nonviolent criminal offense in violation of federal or District of Columbia law, which was committed within the District of Columbia by your client prior to the execution of this agreement, a Awan plea agreement. Awan withdrew hundreds of thousands of dollars after lying on a mortgage application and pretending to have a medical emergency that allowed him to drain his wife's retirement account. He then wired large sums of money to Pakistan in January 2017. And of course, his wife is Hema Alvi. Now, you see some tweets here from some people. This is from Alex Papas. Break ex-Dem IT aide Imran Awan pleads guilty to loan application fraud in federal court as part of a plea agreement. Prosecutors drop charges against his wife. Prosecutors say they investigated allegations of improper behavior in Awan's Congress role, but will bring no charges. And then, of course, you see the tweet from Lee Stranahan and the one that we'll talk about from Donald Trump, where he says, our Justice Department must not let Awan and Debbie Wasserman Schultz off the hook. The Democrat IT scandal is a key to much of the corruption we see today. They want to make a plea deal to hide what is on their server. Where is server? Really bad. So a little insight from our president there, saying they want to make a plea deal to hide what is on the server. And of course, we know that this server is something that was very, very damaging. Now, Q told us just a few days ago that they have the server. So a lot of this doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Q says, think logically. Thing IG report. Now, there could be something to this misspelling. I don't see it at the moment, but there could be something to that, but it could just be a misspelling. But let's talk about the IG report. What is missing? Well, tons and tons of text. Remember, when we think about the IG report, I want you to think about 3 reports. Number 1, we had the Whopper with cheese. That's everything. That's the unmodified, unredacted, full-blown IG report. This we have not yet seen. Then there's number 2. That's the modified report, Rod Rosenstein version. And that's got some modifications in it, probably likely to protect some of the innocent people or certain names, that may need to be protected for national security. Then we've got number 3, all right? And that's what I call the DJ Rodro remix. And that part sucks, okay? Because that one's modified and redacted. And that's the one that the public saw. And even that one still broke quite a bit of news. That's what's missing. So what's missing from the IG report? Well, tons of text, right? And a lot of these texts are going to implicate some of the most senior elected officials. And what does that involve? That involves treason, right? That's being handled by the appropriate office. Who would the appropriate office be? That would be John Huber, I imagine. Okay. But let me now back up just a little bit. Let's talk about Imran Awan, IT aide, okay, for Representative Wasserman Schultz. Now, today they say that there's no evidence that he violated any kind of federal law. I'm not really sure about that. And Lee Stranahan saying that he cannot be charged with any previous nonviolent crime. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't be charged for any other crimes, especially violent crimes. Now, could there be some violent crimes that he's implicated in? Seth Rich? Some of the people who investigated this situation? That remains to be seen. Q is saying this involves national security. And if we remember this, Imran Awan and his Paki posse, there was Imran, Abid, Jamal, his wife, Hema Alvi, who it looks like she just got a deal. And of course, remember the brother was fired from McDonald's, couldn't assemble a Filet-O-Fish sandwich over there at McDonald's, but he was able to assemble some intel from the Muslim Brotherhood. And Imran himself was caught at Dulles Airport trying to get out, trying to leave the country with about $500,000. Clearly, something was wrong. And of course, media didn't want to report this. Mainstream media had nothing to say about this. And even a lot of the mainstream media has saying that this is all one conspiracy theory. Well, I want to take you over to this article, and I'm not going to read off this, but I am going to work off this. This is a great article, and it's a great publication anyway, called the GoldWater. And I just want to turn you on to some of the things that the Awans were wrapped up in. First of all, Imran with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They had this little, it was like a used car lot. They might have rented cars there from whatever. Anyway, the thing was called Cars International A, CIA. Super slick, huh? Yeah, these guys are ninjas right here. So they were likely money laundering through this car lot. And of course, they were doing all sorts of things. They were buying houses and things like that. They were laundering money, all this money that they were making off this data, intel, and equipment that they were selling. And of course, Imran Awan was actually setting up servers for not just Wasserman Schultz. He was working for about, I don't want to say 44 different representatives. So this guy was pretty popular. Now, let me turn you on to something that all of this family had access to. Specifically, the family had access to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, the National Security and Information Technology of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, the Subcommittee on Tactical Air and Land Force of the Armed Services Committee, the Committee on Homeland Security, the Terrorism and Cybersecurity Subcommittee, the Emerging Threats Subcommittee, which oversees terrorist threats to the United States, the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees the nuclear industry, and several other key groups within our Congress. No big deal. Just tons and tons of sensitive data. And they knew this was top secret. And of course, now Imran was charged with bank fraud. That was what he was arrested for at the airport. But he was trying to leave town after having just wired $300,000 to Pakistan. How did this guy make so much money as an IT aide? And he made over $4 million working with some of these congressmen and women. Absolutely insane money. And then the FBI comes, raids his home, and finds all these smashed computers and hard drives at his house. Debbie Wasserman Schultz refuses to fire this guy until he's arrested. And of course, she's desperate to get her hands back on this server shortly afterwards. So desperate that she starts threatening the police. And all this, and Imran Awan strikes a plea deal for bank fraud? Doesn't seem right. Q says, think logically. Think IG report. Think what's missing. Okay, well, what's missing is everything that is going to implicate some of the most senior elected officials. We saw all the stuff between Strzok and Page. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. What was in some of these texts? Now, let me take you back to this post. 586, back in January. What would happen if texts originating from an FBI agent to several internals discussed the assassination possibility of the POTUS or member of his family? Well, assassination would be murder. Assassination of the POTUS would be high treason. Or any member of his family, that's treason. What if the text suggests foreign allies were involved? Well, we're seeing more and more now that they were, through this sort of unofficial, not quite Five Eyes program that they had. Forget the Russia setup, 1 of 22. And of course, I think that was setting up the 22-week countdown period. This is only the beginning. Be careful what you wish for as the world turns. Now, there's a couple ways we could look at that. But I tend to think that it is referring back to the assassination of John F. Kennedy back in the day. And when that was announced on the news, of course, it was a massive deal. It was just a very short announcement. And then immediately it was followed by an episode of As the World Turns. Could messages such as those be publicly disclosed? I don't imagine they could. I imagine they're going to be used as evidence. What happens to the FBI? It gets cleaned out. And that's exactly what we saw. Remember, this post was back from January. What happens to the DOJ? Same thing. Gets all cleaned out. What happens to special counsel? It gets rendered useless. What happens in general? Well, Q answers that. Every FBI, DOJ previous case could be challenged. Lawless. This means that everything that we've seen, whether it's Uranium One, Benghazi, Hezbollah, all can get challenged. Lawless. Think logically. We haven't even started the drops regarding human trafficking / sacrifices yet. Worse. Okay, we're not going to get way into that yet. But obviously this gets worse and worse and worse. And of course, we already know that Q has this because Q has told us over and over that they have the server. Now let's go back to the post. Do you think this was going to be litigated in this setting? No. Remember, John Huber is working all this time, and Sessions has been talking about this for months now, saying that John Huber, with his staff of 470 investigators, setting off to deal with this outside of D.C. Treason. How does treason get handled? It gets handled by military tribunals. That's the appropriate office, okay? So they don't want to do this. They just want to go ahead and make a plea deal and keep kicking this can down the road. Keep in mind, Imran Awan's case has been delayed like 7 times. So clearly, they want to keep this guy around. They don't want to let him get out of the country. They don't want to let him go anywhere. But whatever he has and whatever he knows is a big, big threat to national security. So assuming that he's striking a plea deal doesn't mean he's not guilty of any other crimes. Remember, he cannot be charged with any previous non-violent crime. That doesn't mean he can't be charged with any other crimes. Now let's move on to the next post. This is Donald J. Trump's tweet. Our Justice Department must not let Awan and Debbie Wasserman Schultz off the hook. The Democrat IT scandal is a key to much of the corruption we see today. They want to make a plea deal to hide what is on their server. Where is server? Really bad. So there you go. President Trump is now directing our attention to where the server is. And Trump is answering it very clearly. They're just making a plea deal to hide what's on the server. So could we be seeing Awan eventually making an exchange to testify? That's the only logical explanation I can think of, seeing as he was guilty of so much. They're not going to just let him off the hook. Not with bank fraud. Not this guy. This guy was fleeing the country. This guy had access to the top level security information. To think that they're going to let him go with bank fraud? Q says logical thinking. Why was the case against Awan filed under bank fraud? Because what I just said, the result today is regarding bank fraud. That's part of the plea deal. See last. And of course, Q is talking about this right here. The case that implicates some of the most senior elected officials, treason. That's what they're really trying to hide. Connect. The swamp is being drained. There's a lot of people that have wanted to make sure that we don't see what's on those servers. And of course, Q has already told us we've got it all. Let's move on. Next post, 1673. And Anon says, Anon's law fact here regarding Awan. Anon's already figured this out, but I can add that I have suspected for some time that the state charges were just a delay tactic until the main indictments are unsealed. Yeah, remember, tons and tons of indictments. Who's heading that up? Horowitz Huber. It's also possible, or even likely, given the way they treated Awan, that he will be a prosecution witness. Exactly. Good point. And that would be the big part of the plea deal. So this guy's going to get busted. I wouldn't be surprised if he was, if you remember way back when we were talking about the omnibus, and there was provisions in the omnibus that was giving money to the military. Remember, we were talking about Green Castle and the Army engineers and the wall and all that stuff. But remember, they also got a ton of money to build these facilities that were going to house high-level witnesses, because these people were going to be in a lot of danger. They need to be in secure places so that they could go on with what would likely be military tribunals, or at the very least, high treason. Since they would have never let him in wander otherwise. Yeah, they were not going to let him go. They didn't let him go the first time. They arrested him. They put an ankle bracelet on him. They kept him here. This guy says lots more winning in store. I'm enjoying the movie. Okay, so the whole point here is he's saying this is just a delay tactic. Remember, they were kicking this can down the road. Delayed this thing 7 times until the main indictments are unsealed. And it looks like we're getting closer and closer to that. Now, Q says matters of national security and leaves us this link right here. And it takes us to this here, which is the synopsis of Classified Information Procedures Act, CIPA. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, although it is a really interesting read, and I still want to read through more, but I am going to read you a couple parts of this here. Let's start with this beginning here. Definitions, pretrial conference, protective orders, and discovery. After a criminal indictment becomes public, the prosecutor remains responsible for taking reasonable precautions against the unauthorized disclosure of classified information during the case. This responsibility applies both when the government intends to use classified information in its case in chief, as well as when the defendant seeks to use classified information in his or her defense. The tool with which the proper protection of classified information may be ensured in indicted cases is the Classified Information Procedures Act, CIPA. See Title 18 U.S.C. App 3. Now let me take you down here to Section B, pretrial conference. Section 2 provides that at any time, After the filing of the indictment or information, any party may move for a pretrial conference to consider matters relating to classified information that may arise in connection with the prosecution. Following such a motion, the district court shall promptly hold a pretrial conference to establish the timing of requests for discovery, the provision of notice required by Section 5 of this Act, and the initiation of the procedure established by Section 6 to determine the use, relevance, or admissibility of classified information of this Act. Interesting. Okay, and then let me take you all the way down. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing here, but I'm just trying to get the gist of it. And it looks down here in the very last paragraph. It says, in any criminal case in which it becomes likely that an intelligence agency employee will testify, the Assistant United States Attorney, AUSA, assigned to the case shall immediately notify the Internal Security Section, ISS, that office, in consultation with the General Counsel at the appropriate intelligence agency, will assist the AUSA during the pretrial motion practice and litigation on the issue of whether the witness should testify in true name and other issues related to the testimony of intelligence agency personnel. So, I'm not 100% sure on the ins and outs of this. I'm not a law geek by any means. I'm sure a lot of you probably know a lot more than I do about this, but what I'm looking at here is that it looks like this Anon was kind of on to something here, been talking about the delay tactic, okay, because it needs to give time for these indictments to be unsealed. Now, an important thing to remember about these indictments is that, Huber has prosecutorial power outside of DC, and Q just said back in this post, do you think this was going to be litigated in this setting? No, because what would happen? Think the IG report. Okay, and the IG report's we've been still stuck on the Rod Row remix, right? Terrible. It's moving slow. Why? Because the Dems are fighting it. Take it outside of DC, and now we can move. So I have a feeling that this is protecting some national security information, but at the same time, I think it's going to allow it to come out in a different facet, if that makes any sense. I also think it could be leading to these right here. These are those RICO charges, right? Byrne versus Clinton. And this was as of, when did this last come? Was it June 15th? Byrne versus Clinton. Plaintiff, Gary John Byrne. Defendant, Clinton Foundation. Defendant, Clinton Zustra Enterprise Partnership. Defendant, Media Matters for America. Defendant, Correct the Record. Defendant, American Bridge, 21st Century. Defendant, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Defendant, Share Blue. Defendant, David Brock. Defendant, William Jefferson Clinton. Defendant, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Defendant, George Soros, John Podesta, Jonathan Wackrow, Jan Galuli, and the Clinton Global Initiative. So do you think these are all going to go down in D.C.? I don't know. But it looks to me like our Imran Awan and his Packy posse had tons of information. And is cutting this deal. Doesn't mean he's out of hot water, just cutting this deal. And that's going to keep him around until all these indictments are unsealed. And what's going to come out is going to be leading to higher treason. And that's where his information is going to be so important. After all, he was the one with all the iPhones and all the iPads and the servers and everything that got smashed. And what was on those servers? All the insurance policies. Now, for those of you who are new to Q, the insurance policies were on everybody. Insurance policies are basically, it's an easy way to blackmail. And this happens in music, it happens in politics, it happens in sports, it happens almost everywhere. You start to get some recognition and a little bit of power. You go to a party, have some drinks with your superiors. Next thing you know, you wake up next to a 14-year-old like, what the hell? And you got pictures of it. And it's blackmail. You don't know how you got there. You don't know how it happened. But next thing you know, you're doing everybody's bidding, because God forbid those pictures get out. You'll never be able to explain it. And it's the worst kind of blackmail, and it's rampant in all forms of society. And that's what was on these servers. And much worse, it was special access programs. It was military intel. And of course, it was the proof probably of the Russian collusion. And it's going to eventually run parallel with the IG report. Lots more winning in store. This guy says, I'm enjoying the movie. I am too. Are you? Let's move on. Post 1674. 59 minutes after the hour of 1 p.m., Q says, add another to the list. We get this NPR link. Q says, conspiracy, coincidence, and it takes us to this here off of NPR. Top Justice Department lawyer resigns, latest to step down. The Department of Justice headquarters in Washington, D.C. is losing one of its most experienced top leaders, the latest official to leave for work in the private sector. Scott Schools, a top aide to the Deputy Attorney General, is planning to leave the Justice Department at the end of the week, according to two people familiar with his decision. The job title for Schools, Associate Deputy Attorney General. How about that? Belied his importance as a strategic counselor and repository of institutional memory and ethics at the DOJ. Schools has played a critical, if behind-the-scenes role in some of the most important and sensitive issues in the building. This year, Schools recommended that then Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe be fired for a lack of candor in an internal investigation. Earlier, he advised former acting Attorney General Sally Yates about the boundaries of her congressional testimony in early 2016. And more recently, Schools has been photographed near the offices of Russia Special Counsel Robert Mueller as one of a few top DOJ aides to get regular briefings on the status of that investigation. Scott has provided invaluable leadership and counsel in his years at the department, and his service is an example to all. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said in a written statement, he will be greatly missed, and I wish him the best in his future endeavors. Schools is the latest departure from a Justice Department battered by political attacks over its handling of the 2016 Hillary Clinton email investigation, and more recently, the Russia investigation. Its previous third in command, Rachel Brand, resigned earlier this year. I'm going to stop you right there. Rachel Brand did not resign. The outward story that Rachel Brand was over there investigating low prices over there at Walmart. Global governance, low prices. That was the story. Q told us she was fired. Just saying. Moving on. Nominees to run the Justice Department's Criminal Division, Civil Rights Division, and Environmental and Natural Resources Division have not been confirmed in the Senate. As for Schools, Slate magazine called him the most important unknown person in D.C., and that status has only grown as his boss, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, has found himself on defense among Republicans in Congress over the Mueller investigation. Schools began his career as a prosecutor in South Carolina, rising to become a U.S. attorney there, and in the Northern District of California, where he signed off on charges against baseball phenom Barry Bonds. For years, Schools has worked alongside another Justice Department mainstay, David Margulies, who was known as the Yoda of the department. When Margulies died, DOJ brass asked Schools to come back to Washington to try to fill those shoes. Schools is said to be leaving for a job in the private sector. One source who worked with Schools said there was no sign he was being pushed out. Another said Schools was not leaving because of a disagreement with DOJ leadership. But his departure as the highest-ranking career lawyer at the Justice Department will add to a brain drain from the department at a time when it's under attack from President Trump and his allies in Congress. Schools will be replaced on an acting basis by Bradley Weinsheimer, who currently works in the National Security Unit. Weinsheimer has spent 27 years at DOJ, where he tried homicide and public corruption cases. Unlike Schools, Weinsheimer will not supervise or otherwise be involved in overseeing the special counsel team probing Russian election interference and whether any Americans tied to the Trump campaign took part. This is interesting because this guy right here, who doesn't really seem, outwardly, I don't see any dirt on this guy. I don't know much about him, to be honest with you, but it looks like he was one of Rod Rosenstein's bros, one of Rod Rose bros. So he was a Rosenstein, all right? And he's stepping down in a very interesting position, considering he's a top aide to the Deputy Attorney General. Now, that next in line was going to be that Rachel Brand, and we just talked about her, left for Walmart. So this position seems to be a really tricky position to fill. And now we've got this Weinsheimer, who currently works in the National Security Unit, 27 years at the DOJ, where he tried homicide and public corruption cases. Well, we've got some homicide and public corruption cases for you. Now, he's not going to be working on the Russian election interference, very much like Sessions also recused himself for that. So it remains to be seen what Weinsheimer's role will be. And interestingly enough, he was known as the Yoda of the department. And we were just talking about Yoda, weren't we?
Divide they try, fail they will.
It's a free show, folks. That's as good as it's going to get right here. All right. Well, Q says add another to the list. Conspiracy? Coincidence? I think not. I think it's just the force. 1675. An Anon posts this. And it's President Trump. He's about to throw some hands with somebody by Marine Force. Maybe he's going to throw down with a Marine. He's like, come at me, bro. I'm off to save the world. Aren't you coming? Welcome aboard. We get this picture from Q. And it looks like an Apple logo turned on its side. And it's another one of those kinky, funny pictures. We're going to talk about this picture in just a second, as we will get some clarity in just a minute. But in post 1676, Q refers us back to this quote from the NPR article I just read. For years, schools worked alongside another Justice Department mainstay, David Margulies. Incidentally, David Margulies died of a heart issue just 5 days after the murder of Seth Rich, who was known as the Yoda of the department. When Margulies died, DOJ brass asked schools to come back to Washington to try to fill those shoes. Divide they try, fail they will. Everything has meaning. Q. All right. Well, looks like more Seth Rich references to me, and considering everything we've just been talking about these servers, it looks like we are getting closer and closer to finding out hopefully what's on those servers, and hopefully exactly what happened to Seth Rich. Let's move on. Post 1677, we get this picture from an Anon here called Another Distortion Coat, and this is matching up the previous picture to the interior of what looks to be Air Force One there. Welcome aboard, JPEG is a lie. And then we get this one called Q-Proof, which looks to be a phone taking a picture of another phone in the reflection. Pic related. I just took this photo. I am holding Wife Anon's iPhone 10 and taking a picture of the reflection on the back with my iPhone 7 Plus. Is this what Q is doing with the Air Force One and previous partial GEODIS headshots? And then this Anon adds this one called Qwerty and matches this up to the lamp behind President Trump and Air Force One there. And some people are saying that this angle kind of makes it look like a Q. Huh. Who would have thought that the Twitter phone could be so useful? Do reflections violate national security rules? Where must one be located in order to obtain a reflection on the back of a phone of that image? Image provided here has been distorted, stretched. Q. Well, I would assume you need to be located near something that has a reflection, and then you also need something that has the Apple logo. And so that could be an Apple phone, it could be an Apple server, it could be an Apple, anything that really has basically an Apple on it. You need to get that reflection somehow. So I'm assuming it's from an Apple product, which I think is some ultimate trolling here. Now, do reflections violate national security rules? I'm going to assume no. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I missed school the day they taught mirror clauses in the national security rules, but I'm just going to assume that Q knows what they're doing. High level trolling going on. Q says, who would have thought the Twitter phone could be so useful? And that trolling is confirmed here in 1678, where an Anon posts this Wojak JPEG here. And it's a picture of a dude who looks to be me, crying my face off because I woke up late and there's 20 Q posts and now I'm 8 hours behind and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. Except I don't wear a correct the record sweatshirt just to correct the record. Nor do I wear collars under my sweatshirt because that seems counterproductive to me. I wear hoodies because I'm dope. Shill's going nuts tonight. Something huge must be coming this week. Several months late on whining about Iran. Back to spamming LARP boomer schizo from the 4chan days. Sad. Q says trolling is fun. Hussein, Trump, interior equals identical minus small changes. World News in rear literally placed same prior to each departure. Placing that mug holder near the lamp was the hook. Enjoy. Q. So it looks like Q is confirming what the Anons are suspecting. And that is a massive troll considering it is an Apple logo. And there you can kind of see how it looks a little bit more like a Q in that angle right there. Remember, it was iPhones and a lot of Apple products that Imran Awan made off with. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of this material. And then, of course, they were smashing some of that later on, smashing those hard drives, bleach bitting them. What was that all about? Q down here talks about the Twitter phone. Who would have thought the Twitter phone could be so useful? Well, you may or may not know, President Trump uses 2 iPhones. And we know this because of Senator Dude, you are such a dick Durbin, just happened to blurt it out, talking about these 2 phones that President Trump has. And one of them he's always on Twitter with. And that's the one that all his aides want to try and take away from him all the time so that they can update the phone. He won't let them, saying that it's too convenient. Either that or he knows what they're going to try and do with it. Well, massive level trolling going on here by the Q team, as well as President Trump. I would call that troll level Space Force. Now, as you can see, I've been reading a couple new posts here, and if you followed my reading at the beginning of the video, you'll see that these have all been coming in real time, so I didn't cover them then. But we've got a couple more posts here. Post 1679, 15 minutes after the hour of 11 p.m. This one's entitled United, and we have the picture of somebody looking through the blinds into a United plane. And post 1680, adding on to that, we have a picture of what looks to be a Hong Kong and a gentleman, United Hong Kong, identified T3902. And Q says, "Who do you see?" And I'll blow that up for you here. Now, look, this just came in, so I haven't had much time to look at this, but just at glance, this looks to me like Carter Page crossing the street. I couldn't think of an immediate connection, but I do want to bring this up here. Here's a graphic from somebody on Twitter that brought this up in relation to some of Carter Page's relations to not just the Trump campaign, but some of his financial contributions, as well as some of his investments. Remember, he was involved in this meeting regarding lifting sanctions on Moscow in exchange for certain things. So I don't want to go way into this yet because I have a feeling that this is about to get added on to. But this says here, right, Page, who the White House has said was only loosely connected to the Trump campaign, emphasized he was not a campaign insider. I was never paid by the Trump campaign and never made any financial contributions to that movement, with the negligible exception of purchasing a few Make America Great Again hats and a Veterans for Trump button. Furthermore, I have never received any transactions, fees, financial compensation, equity stake, or related offers from Rosneft in 2016 or at any points in my life. Well, there seems to be a lot of evidence to the contrary, and although I'm not ready to go right into this because, like I said, the post just came out, I'd like to spend a little more time on this, but I have a feeling it might be going this way. He's also been tied to this company Glencore, and this just came out on July 3rd. Glencore drops after U.S. orders document in corruption probe. Glencore PLC tumbled the most in 2 years as U.S. authorities demanded documents relating to possible corruption and money laundering. The world's biggest commodity trader said Tuesday that it's been subpoenaed by the U.S. Department of Justice to hand over documents related to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and U.S. money laundering statutes. The documents relate to the company's business in Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Venezuela from 2007 to the present. The shares plunged as much as 13% before paring some of the losses, wiping up to £6.7 billion, $8 billion off Glencore's market value, more than half the $14.8 billion of profit the company made last year. It's been a tumultuous year for Glencore, mostly due to challenges linked to its businesses in the Congo, where it operates giant copper and cobalt mines. And keep in mind, part of President Trump's executive order was referring to human rights abuses in the Congo, where it operates giant copper and cobalt mines. The Swiss trader and miner is already facing the possibility of a bribery investigation by UK prosecutors over its work with Dan Gertler, an Israeli billionaire and close friend of Congo President Joseph Kabila, people familiar with the situation said in May. It's a very worrying development for any multinational to be subpoenaed by the U.S. Justice Department, given their reputation for prosecuting foreign corruption and money laundering aggressively, said Daniel Leader, a lawyer for Lee Day in London. The DOJ takes a very aggressive stance on jurisdiction, so it's sufficient for the transaction to be in U.S. dollars for them to say they have jurisdiction. Glencore says it's reviewing the subpoena and will provide further information as appropriate. The shares dropped to the lowest in almost a year and were down 5.3% by 2:10 p.m. in London. Okay, I'm going to leave you with that for there, but I have a feeling that we're going to see some more Q posts, and I have a feeling this Dan Gertler, Israeli billionaire and close friend of Congo President Joseph Kabila, those guys, I have a feeling, are going to be popping up in our Q news. Just a guess. I could be wrong, but I think that would be our Carter Page link right there. I would like to dig more into this before I really give you any more, but that will maybe hopefully get you started. Okay, those are your Q posts for the day. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Share this video. And if anything comes up, I will be on it. I will also start attacking these new pictures, and I will probably update you in the next video. I have a feeling the following Q posts are going to probably add on to this topic, so we'll get some more clarity there. Bear in mind, please, I'm not 100% sure that that is Carter Page. I'll give you one more look at it there. That was just my guess offhand, but hopefully the next few posts will give us a little bit more insight as to what we're looking at. There you go. Until next time, this is Sir Patrick Mack. Stay on the right side of the road.